You're on the beach. It is 2 a.m. The Pacific is 58 degrees. You've been awake for 54 hours. Your uniform has not been dry since Monday. The sand has worked its way into places that will be raw and bleeding by morning. Your legs stopped feeling like legs around hour 30. They are just things that move when your brain tells them to. The man to your left quit an hour ago, walked up to the brass bell, rang it 3 times, set his helmet on the ground, and walked away. The instructors said nothing. They never say anything when someone rings out. They just keep looking at you. There are 3 days left. Hell Week runs for 5.5 days, 132 hours, with a total of approximately 4 hours of sleep across the entire evolution. You are not sleeping in shifts. You are not getting 2 hours here and 2 hours there. You get sporadic rest measured in minutes, in the sand, fully clothed, before the whistles bring you back to your feet. Your body has stopped producing adrenaline the normal way. It is running on something older and slower, something that will take weeks to recover from. The evolutions never stop. You run 4 miles through soft sand in boots. You paddle your 7-man inflatable boat through breaking surf that capsizes it, and you right it and paddle again. You carry a 200-pound telephone pole, 6 men, shoulder height, through an obstacle course that was designed by people who wanted it to be impossible and nearly succeeded. You do push-ups in the surf zone until the Pacific is filling your nose and the wave behind you hits before the one in front has finished. They call it a sugar cookie when an instructor makes you wet yourself and then roll in the sand. You will spend the rest of that evolution in a uniform that has become sandpaper. By Wednesday, the chafing has broken the skin on your inner thighs, your neck, your wrists. You do not stop. Stopping is the one option that is entirely yours to choose, and it is the one option you are not choosing. By Wednesday night, the hallucinations begin. Your brain, deprived of sleep, starts generating its own input. Men have seen buses on the beach, entire structures that are not there. The instructors know exactly what stage each man is at. They have seen every version of this, and they know precisely how far they can push before it crosses from training into medical emergency. They operate right at that edge, deliberately. This is the feature, not the bug. The brass bell has a specific sound. You will know it for the rest of your life. Most BUDS classes lose between 70 and 80% of candidates by the end of Hell Week. You can ring it right now. No one will stop you. No one will say anything negative. The instructors will hand you a warm cup of coffee and a dry uniform within 60 seconds. The suffering ends the instant you decide it does. You don't ring it. BUDS is 6 months. 3 phases that get progressively more specific about what they are preparing you for. Phase 1 is physical conditioning. 8 weeks of runs, swims, and obstacle courses with times that get shorter as your class gets smaller. You run everywhere, to meals, to class, to the beach. Back from the beach, you do not walk, you are wet for most of it. The 4-mile timed run in soft sand with boots is a recurring event. The 2-mile ocean swim is a recurring event. The obstacle course is a recurring event. Your body adapts or it breaks. Pool competency happens during Phase 1 and eliminates people that the physical evolution doesn't reach. You enter the pool with your hands zip-tied behind your back and your feet bound. You perform a series of exercises, bobbing, floating on your back, swimming the length with no arms. Then the instructors approach and remove your mask. Take your regulator. Tie knots in your air hose. They are not trying to drown you, but they are going to find out right now whether you panic when your air supply is compromised in a controlled pool environment. Panic is a fail. The test takes roughly 20 minutes. Men who have passed the toughest physical evolutions of Phase 1 fail pool competency because the body's response to oxygen deprivation and unexpected submersion is not a fitness variable. It is a psychological one. The 50-meter underwater swim is a single breath, full pool length. Some men black out at the far end and sink. The instructors pull them from the bottom. Most make it. There is no second attempt that day. Hell Week ends Phase 1. Phase 2 is dive phase, combat diving, not recreational diving. Closed-circuit rebreathers that leave no bubbles on the surface. Underwater navigation by compass bearing in zero visibility conditions. Hydrographic reconnaissance. Swimming a beach at night to survey its composition, gradient, and obstructions for an amphibious landing force. The Navy does not want operators who are comfortable underwater. It wants operators for whom the underwater environment is simply another operational domain, with its own tools and techniques no more inherently threatening than a building or a jungle. Phase 3 is land warfare. Weapons qualification on every platform a SEAL might encounter or need to operate. Demolitions, small unit tactics, reconnaissance, close quarters battle, the methodology for clearing buildings, rooms, and confined spaces under fire. This is not infantry-level CQB. This is the version developed specifically for Tier 1 direct action, refined over 2 decades of combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, and continuously updated based on what actually happened in those environments. By the time you graduate BUDS, your class has typically lost 80% of the men who started it. The ones who graduated were not necessarily the fittest, or the strongest, or the fastest. They were the ones who never gave themselves permission to stop. You graduate BUDS, you are not yet a SEAL. SEAL qualification training is 6 more months. Static line and military freefall parachuting, exiting aircraft at up to 35,000 feet in full kit, navigating under canopy to a release point that may be 40 kilometers from the target. Advanced combat medicine, not first aid, not basic trauma care, but the level of surgical intervention required to keep a teammate alive for 2 hours in a denied environment with no medevac inbound. Additional driving, advanced weapons, SERE, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, and language training specific to the region you are most likely to deploy to. At the end of SQT, you are awarded the Trident. You are a SEAL. SEAL Teams 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 10, East Coast and West Coast. A SEAL platoon is 16 men, 2 officers and 14 enlisted. In the field, you operate as 8-man squads, 4-man teams, or 2-man pairs. The smaller the element, the further into denied terrain you can go without detection. 4 men can move through an environment where a conventional platoon would be compromised in minutes. You are on the range every week, not occasionally, every week. The shooting standard in SEAL teams is not a certification you pass and maintain. It is a continuous upward escalation. Every time you shoot, you are shooting at a standard that is higher than the last time. The men who have been in the teams for 10 years shoot better than the men who have been in for 2. Not because they are more talented, but because they have put 200,000 more rounds through a rifle, and the repetitions are compounded into reflex. You are jumping regularly. You are diving in conditions that recreational divers would refuse. You are running movements at night in terrain you have never seen, with a team whose individual capabilities you know as precisely as you know your own. The training cycle between deployments is not a rest period. It is the period in which the capability that keeps you alive on deployment is built. It is 0 to 30. Your element is moving through a compound in complete darkness. No visible light. Night vision. Thermal imaging on your kit shows heat signatures through the walls of the building ahead. 2 people in the main structure. The target location consistent with the intelligence packet. The interpreter is behind you. The stack forms at the door. You have rehearsed this entry 60 times in the last 72 hours. The mock-up was built to the actual dimensions of the actual building. You know exactly how many steps to the first corner, exactly where the secondary room opens, exactly what angle covers the staircase. This is not improvisation. Direct action at this level is executed through repetition so thorough that the correct movement is automatic. Your conscious mind is tracking the space, reading what is actually there versus what the intel said would be there. Your body is executing the drill. The breach, the door comes down. The stack flows through the entry. In a direct action raid, the breach is the moment everything accelerates simultaneously, and the goal is to move faster than the occupants can process what is happening. From breach to target secured, 30 seconds, sometimes 20. Not every mission is a direct action raid. SEAL teams conduct foreign internal defense, living and working with partner forces in countries where the US has no declared combat presence, building the capability of allied militaries from inside those militaries. They conduct hydrographic reconnaissance, swimming a beach at night in advance of an amphibious landing, measuring depth gradients and mapping obstructions for the landing force. They conduct VBSS, visit, board, search, and seizure, intercepting vessels at sea to prevent weapons shipments from reaching their destinations. The missions that make the news are a fraction of what SEAL teams actually do. For every operation that eventually appears in a congressional hearing or a memoir, there are dozens that don't. The ones executed most precisely, that left the least visible trace, that produced the result with the minimum possible signature. Those are the ones that stay classified. The teams that execute them understand this completely. Here's what a Navy SEAL is, stripped of all the mythology. You are a man who chose the harder option at every decision point, not because it was demanded, but because you decided at some point that easy was not the standard you were willing to accept. You rang no bell. You quit nothing. You are now one of roughly 2,500 active SEAL operators in a military of 1.3 million people. You can jump from 35,000 feet and navigate 40 kilometers under canopy to a release point. You can place demolition charges on a vessel hull at night without breaking the surface. You can deliver emergency surgery in a building with no power, no sterile field, and one teammate holding a torch. You can clear a room in darkness with 3 other men in under 10 seconds and have every one of you know where every other is at every moment during the movement. You can do all of this after 72 hours without sleep, in the coldest water the Pacific offers, in terrain with no support and no margin. The men who rang the bell at Coronado were not physically inferior to the men who didn't. Most of them were capable of continuing. The difference was not in the body. The difference was in the decision made at 2 a.m. on a cold beach when every rational signal said stop. The US military has 1.3 million active duty personnel. There are approximately 2,500 active SEAL operators. The gap between those two numbers is not training. It is the decision. Made once at Coronado, and then remade every single day for the rest of a career.